of it, we know a lot about it. We've read these stories all of our lives. We've heard.
When I started drinking.
God says He's going to bring Messiah into the world. Satan's going to try to stop him. We've been looking at the lives of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and what we're going to call their attempts on their life. God says, He says He's going to bring His Son in through Abraham. We can look at Abraham's life and the things that he went through. Abraham realizes that this is the God. And then it's down to his son. And then it's down to Isaac. And it's down to Isaac's son, Jacob. And we can see all through there the troubles that they went through, Satan trying to thwart God's plan. That's the overall picture. There's a lot of other details that we could get out of these stories, but that's basically the overall picture. God and Satan, and the war that goes on between them. God says, I'm bringing in a Messiah. Satan's going to try to do everything he can to prevent it. So we're in Genesis chapter 37. We're going to skim through a lot of this, just touch some highlighted points. We know the story of Jacob and Joseph and those things like that. And we're going to wind up all the way in Exodus, the first chapter. My goodness, yeah, we're going to go through that far. But we're not going to go chapter by chapter, verse by verse. We're hitting highlighted points here. And listen, some of this you might not agree with on. That's fine. You don't have to. You won't go to heaven or hell one way or the other. I'm just trying to show you that there is a definite battle. It's a spiritual battle, and it happens on this earth. And each of us, we're in spiritual battles as well. But we know that Jacob had 12 sons, and he had those 12 sons by 4 women. Leah was his first wife, Rachel was his second, and then the 2 concubines, each of them had a handmaid, Bilhah and Zilpah. And that's how he acquired those 12 boys. And he made a mistake just like his old daddy did. He had a favorite son. And we know that Rachel was the wife that he worked for so long. He worked for 7 years and was deceived on his wedding night, and there's Leah. He got the wrong woman. The way that he deceived his father, he was deceived. And so he worked another 7 years in order to have Rachel as a wife. He waited a week, then he married Rachel and had to work another 7 years for Rachel. Rachel was his favorite wife. That's the one he loved. The Bible says it several different times. Rachel was the one that he loved. Incidentally, whenever he goes to meet Esau, remember, he doesn't know what's going to happen between him and Esau. The last time they parted ways, Esau wanted to kill him. He set up his concubines and Leah and then Rachel with Joseph last to meet Esau. And that was in an order of protecting them. So Joseph was the oldest son of his favored wife. In other words, had Laban not intervened, Joseph would have been his oldest son. This was his favorite son by his favorite wife. And you remember Jacob gave him what the Bible calls a coat of, my Bible inserts many colors. It's in italics in my Bible, so that means it's not in the original. He gave him a coat of colors, and it's believed to be a long-sleeved outer coat. In other words, it would go all the way to the wrists and all the way to the ankles, and it would be something that a nobleman would wear. And it would have been something that was very expensive and something that was showy. And whoever had this long-sleeved coat meant that they were the heir. That's what it meant. So when Jacob gives Joseph this coat of colors, he is signifying to the rest of the family, this one is going to be my heir. He's the first son of his favorite wife. Now, you're the devil. What would you think concerning Joseph? Well, you're thinking this is going to be the one. This is the one through whom the Messiah can come. Remember, Satan's not omniscient. He's not all-knowing. God is the one who knows. And God will use the things in our lives, in their lives, and He'll use things in our lives in order to bring about His desire and His plan in the end. God knows that He's working with people that are imperfect. We know that. We're looking at our own lives and we can see how imperfect we are, but yet God uses us in a mighty way, does He not? He uses us in a mighty way, and He used these people in a mighty way. And so even the brothers, they probably thought that Joseph was going to receive the birthright. But you can imagine how they must have felt knowing that they were only going to have to split 1/3. Remember, the birthright meant that, we said last week, birthright meant that you got 2/3 of whatever daddy owned. And so these other boys are going to have to split 1/3. So you can imagine they weren't too happy. But we have the devil focused on Joseph. And Joseph is a good boy. The Bible doesn't say anything bad about Joseph. Now, I've heard sermons concerning Joseph's lives and how preachers will interject what they think Joseph was, that he was a prideful kid and whatnot. When he tells a dream, do you remember he had the dream? His sheep and his brother's sheep that bowed down to his. And you remember he had the dream about the sun, moon, and the stars and how they bowed down to him. And his father even questioned, "Wait, are you saying me and your mother and your brothers are going to bow down to you and that you're going to be superior over us?" It's not that he was prideful. He questioned about these dreams. The Bible never says one bad thing about Joseph's life. Not one. There is not one sin that is mentioned about Joseph throughout the entire Bible. People have interjected and said that they supposed he sinned, but the Bible never does. And incidentally, Joseph in many ways is a type of Jesus Christ. He's a picture of Jesus. There are 40 different ways. One day we'll have to go through that. There's 40 different ways in which you can look at Joseph's life and you can compare it to Jesus' life. But here you have Satan. He thinks that Joseph is the boy. And his brothers hate him. And you remember, they were going to kill him. They threw him in a pit. Why didn't they kill him? Because they saw that there was a profit to be made. We could sell him instead. We could make money. And so they sell him into Egypt. And all the things that happened in Joseph's life, we can see how the devil was coming against him. I believe that. You remember what Satan went before God? And God says, "Where have you come from?" He said, "From roaming over the face of the earth." He said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Yeah, but if you release your hand from him, he'll curse you. And then God allows him to do things. And Job never sins against God. Remember his wife and his friends said, "Curse God and just die." Remember the second time Satan comes before him, "But if you let me touch him," God said, "You can do whatever you can, but don't kill him." Remember that? Satan is allowed to do different things. He's not omniscient. He doesn't know anything. So Satan might believe that Joseph is going to be the one. He's the one through the Messiah is going to come. He's seen the way Jacob is treating him. So what would you try to get Joseph to do? Well, you see what happened with Potiphar's wife. What was the punishment had he laid with Potiphar's wife? He'd have been killed. But he didn't lie with Potiphar's wife, and he's thrown into prison, falsely thrown into prison. How easy would it be for somebody to die in prison in those days compared to today? Executions were normal, were an everyday happening in that day and time. Their prisons were a lot rougher than what ours were. But you remember, he found favor whenever he was in the prison. The devil could have got him killed in prison, but God was with him. And then we come all the way to chapter 50 and verse 20, and Joseph says, "Yeah, I told you, we can go fast. You meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day to save many people alive." Now it's interesting. When Abraham was on the face of the earth, you remember he encountered two famines. The first famine, he went to Egypt. The second famine, he went to Abimelech. And both times, he had problems. Remember, both times he lied. Isaac comes along, guess what? There's another famine in the land. And he goes down to Abimelech. Jacob looks like there's another famine in the land. This time, God's got a plan in place already. He's already had his man down there getting things settled up. Why? Joseph said, so that he could save many people. And that's exactly what he did. And so you've heard it said, you need to put your best foot forward. You've heard that said before. You always got to put your best foot forward. But sometimes, maybe putting your best foot forward isn't the best thing for you to do. Because Joseph, in his wisdom, tells them in chapter 46, Joseph tells his family, he says, when you come before Pharaoh, you tell Pharaoh that we're shepherds. Why? Why did he want them to tell him that they're shepherds? Because the shepherds was an abomination to the Egyptians. You tell them we tend sheep, we're shepherds. They were an abomination. That way you could stay in Goshen. What's important about them staying in Goshen? Why not just let them stay in Egypt? Why not be in Egypt? Why do they need to be in Goshen? And if you look on your map, there is a difference between Egypt and Goshen. What's the purpose? Anybody? There has to be a reason.
It was suitable for them and their livestock, and a good place for them to.
Oh yeah, that's a good place, yeah. But it's deeper than that. Huh? It's deeper than that. The famine's already here. Deeper than that. Can you tell me?
They're separated from the Egyptians.
Why? So they won't intermarry. That keeps them separated so that they won't intermarry. That's very important. And incidentally, throughout their history, that's one of the things that the Israelites had problems with. They intermarried with other women of other nations. Can you name
Religions.
Huh?
Religions is
And religions. Yeah. Can you name me somebody in the Old Testament who married other women?
Samson.
He comes to mind. Who else? Esau. But let's go this forward into Israel's history. You're right, Esau, but who else? Solomon. Anybody else? We're going to see later on what happened with the Samaritans. How they became Samaritans. You remember how they became Samaritans?
The whole 10 tribes of Israel.
Whole 10 tribes. So they're going to have a problem with that. And that's why the Jews of Jesus' day hated the Samaritans, because they tainted the bloodline. We see that when somebody, and I use the word tainted bloodline, just forgive me for using that word, they looked at that as someone who did not believe in the promises of God. God said he's bringing a son. They look at that as someone who was not faithful to God. It's one of the reasons why the Jews hated the Samaritans so much. One of the reasons, not the only reason. All right. So let's go to chapter 49. This is where we'll spend a little bit of time tonight because it's very important. Very, very, very important. Chapter 49 and 50. And we come to, it's time for Jacob to give the blessing to his boys. And he's on his deathbed, and most likely he would have been given the birthright to Joseph being the oldest son, but Joseph, because he would have been the oldest one, but he's not going to get it. You remember, Joseph brings his boys, and there's the oldest and the youngest. And Jacob switches his hands, and he blesses the youngest one over the oldest one, and that disturbed Joseph. And Joseph tried to switch his hands, and Jacob said, no, this is the way it's got to be. Once again, we have the younger having supremacy over the older. Now, when we come to chapter 49, verse 1, Jacob says, gather together. And I want you to hear, Listen to what I have to say. And he comes to verse 3. And Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Reuben is the oldest, and he would have had the birthright, but the reason why he didn't get the birthright is because he went up to his father's bed and slept with one of the concubines. Now listen, Jacob had just buried Rachel. And he leaves, just buried her, same chapter, leaves, pitches his tent, and Reuben went in and he lays with one of his concubines, one of the women. And so Reuben isn't going to get the blessing. Then we come to 5 and 7, 5 through 7. Simeon and Levi, you are brothers, instruments of cruelty, are dwelling in their dwelling places. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and with wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Why did Simeon and Levi receive such a blessing? Do you remember? We talked about it last week for the 16 that were here.
Yeah, they avenged their sister's rape.
They avenged their sister being raped. Should he treat our sister as a harlot? Is the way to reply to Jacob. Jacob was displeased that they went in. Remember, they made an agreement. Shechem wanted to marry Dinah. They made an agreement. Said, we can't marry y'all. You're uncircumcised. But if all y'all get circumcised, we'll marry your daughters and you can marry our daughters. And Shechem and Nahor, they go back and they talk to Hamor and Tamar. They go back and talk to their family, their kinfolk. They say, oh yeah, we agree to do that. And the Bible says when they were in their pain on the third day, Simeon and Levi went and slew all the males. And they took the women and the children and all the livestock. Women and children were slaves and took all the livestock. And so they didn't get it. Now, the tribe of Levi will redeem themselves from this curse. You remember when they redeemed themselves? Remember when the golden calf was erected? Moses said, who's on the Lord's side? And Levi stood with Moses, the tribe of Levi stood with Moses, and they slew 3,000 of their brethren on that day. At the end, here's the important thing. At the institution of the old law, 3,000 people died. At the institution of the new covenant on the day of Pentecost, 3,000 people were saved. You see the correlation? But these numbers aren't just random numbers. These things happen. And there's a correlation between the old and the new. And we can see it happen throughout. Ministration of death was the old law. It began with death. Ministration of life is the new covenant. We're going on to everlasting life. And it's shown in baptism with 3,000 being saved. Now, we come to Judah. So Simeon and Levi, they're not going to get it. Of course, we all know Judah's going to be the tribe where the Messiah comes. But this is important. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. That's important. Throughout the Old Testament, we're going to see the tribe of Judah go out and conquest and be victorious. So here we go. All right. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him? Verse 10 is the most important part. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. The scepter is the rod that the king holds when he rules. Nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Shiloh means he whose right it is to rule. That's what Shiloh means. So the scepter's not going to depart from the tribe of Judah until the one shows up whose right it is to rule. And to him shall be the obedience of the people. Who are we obedient to? Jesus Christ. Right? We're obedient to Jesus Christ. And so now we know who the Messiah, what tribe the Messiah is going to come out of. A particular tribe, Judah, of a particular nation out of Abraham, out of a particular race of Shem, of a woman. And it's been narrowed down for us all the way through. Till finally it's going to be narrowed down to a particular family. One particular family. Any woman in the world could have been the mother of the Messiah if it didn't have to come from Shem. And so with her having to be of the tribe of Judah, it narrows it down as to where you got to look. So now the devil and the rest of the world knows what tribe the Messiah was going to come from. Now here's the kingship is not going to depart from Judah until the Messiah comes. We know David was the first king of Judah who ruled over Israel. You remember what tribe Saul was from? Go ahead.
Benjamin?
Yeah. He's from Benjamin. And then we have King David is the first one from the tribe of Judah. See, it could be out of a different tribe at first. But once it comes to Judah, that's it. It's going to stay in Judah. And his descendants rule until when? Herod. You remember what Herod was? He was an Edomite. He's from Esau. He's from the line of Esau. So we have the Judah, the tribe of Judah that has the kingly line. And it's when Herod comes to the throne, we have an Edomite. And he's not of Judah. He became king. And it was during Herod's reign in which Jesus Christ was born. The prophecy that Jacob gave was 1,700 years before Christ came. And it came true. It's a fulfilled prophecy. No future one, today or any other time, could claim to be the Messiah after the time of Jesus. They couldn't qualify to be the Messiah. Because the Messiah has to be born of the tribe of Judah when the scepter departs from Judah. When Pilate asked, you remember, we're going to the book of John, and Jesus is standing there. And he says, here's your king. Speaking of Jesus. You remember what they said? Crucify! Crucify! And he said, what shall I do? He said, shall I crucify your king? And you remember what the high priest said? We have no king but Caesar. The high priest himself proved that the Messiah was around. They knew the prophecy. Now you want to talk about people being blind? They were blind. They knew the Old Testament better than we did because that's all they had. They knew the prophecies that were given throughout the Old Testament. They knew what the prophecies were concerning the tribes that they were from. Believe me, they knew that. Those people valued their heritage. And they knew that when the scepter departed from Judah, the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. He whose right it is to rule. And there is no one else that has more right to rule in this life or in the life after than Jesus Christ. He is the one who has the right to rule. He has the right to rule forevermore because he went to the cross. And he died. And he becomes, remember, all authority has been given to him in heaven and on earth. He has the right. And so they should have known. And so God boldly tells what tribe it's going to come from. Interesting, the history of all the tribes would show the striking fulfillment of these prophecies that are given. We won't go through all of those, through the rest of these. The important one is for our study is Judah. In particular, from the tribe of Judah, we have the area that becomes known as Judea, and the people that will later be called the Israelites, that will later be called the Jews, which would be the ones of Jesus' day. And as I said earlier, remember, Judah is famous for his conquest. They're famous for the royal line. They are famous for being a distinct people until Shiloh, or the Messiah, comes into the world. All the way down. Their bloodline was true. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin were carried into Babylonian captivity, and they were there for 70 years. And after that, they returned back to their homeland. Remember, they returned back to their homeland. They do not pass into all the other nations. They don't intermingle with all the other nations of the world until when? Does anybody know? 70 A.D. Its destruction of Jerusalem. Now listen. There is no Jew today who can trace his lineage back to Abraham. All those records of the family trees were destroyed in Jerusalem at its destruction. And according to some scholars today, there's no Jew that can trace their history past the 4th or the 5th century. So what does that tell us? Our faith is not in vain. Because Matthew and Luke give us the genealogies of Jesus that can trace his history all the way back. So Jesus Christ, the one that we call Lord, the one that we call Messiah, he's the only one it can be. He's the only one. So our faith is not in vain. If one came today and claimed to be the Messiah, how could he prove it? There's no king on the throne in Israel. Number one. Number two, he can't trace his lineage back. Number three, he'd have to be born of a virgin. It's already happened. So, now, you remember what tribe Joshua came from? Good, because I couldn't either. I had to look it up. Joseph, his blessing was given down to his two boys, so he got a double portion in the blessings, Ephraim and Manasseh. And Joshua comes from the tribe of Ephraim and became the great leader after Moses. So that's where Ephraim got some of its clout in history. But later on, as we kind of alluded to earlier, the 10 tribes are going to be carried away into Assyrian captivity. And they intermingled, they intermarried with their conquerors, and their bloodline was entirely lost. Gone. And that's where we got those Samaritans from the New Testament. And that's why the Jews of Jesus' day didn't like the Samaritans. They were half Jews. Now they're in Egypt. Alright, they're in Egypt. And we come to Exodus chapter 1. Verse 8, and there was a king who did not know Joseph. And a great multitude has now arisen. Now, we got to, why in the world? We got this great multitude that's been allowed to prosper, and the devil only knows what he's allowed to know. He's not all knowing, he can only know what he hears. And he's got this great multitude, and the time is about up for Israel to be released. What do you mean? How do you know that? If you went back all the way to Genesis, the 15th chapter, we would find that God made some promises to Abraham. We get lost when we start reading all this, and we lose track of time, so to speak. God doesn't, neither does Satan. We lose track of time, but they don't. They grow into this great multitude, so if you're the devil, what would you do? Well, you'd probably do what He did. You're going to get all them baby boys killed because there's a boy coming. There's a male coming. Why would he do it now and not earlier? That's a good question. Why wait so long? Time's running out. What do you mean time's running out? Genesis 15, God made a promise to Abraham, and he told him that his descendants would be strangers in a foreign land, and they would be afflicted 400 years. That 400 years is about up. From that time to the time that Israel is going to be released out of Egypt is 400 years. And so that time is about up. And he said that they would be afflicted 400 years and that they would come out with great possessions. Now you remember, when they did leave Egypt, they didn't even have to raise a sword, and they plundered the Egyptians. They left the wealth. It's estimated that the time that they left Egypt, it's estimated that they were 2 million of them. 2 million Jews, the Israelites that came out of there. Now, that's a nation. Remember what God made promise to Abraham? Count the stars. Can you count them? That's how your descendants are going to be. And of course, his descendants are Christians today. We are also the seed of Abraham, which live by faith. And so they can't be counted. And so the time is about up. The baby boy of the Semitic race of the nation of Abraham, of the tribe of Judah, is going to get me. And the Israelites are multiplying. And the 400 years are about up. So what does he do? He kills those boy babies. And of course, we remember Moses escaped. The boy escaped. The son of the parents who had faith to disobey the king's order by killing their child. That Redeemer was raised right under Pharaoh's nose. I want you to go to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11. There's a couple times we've come to Hebrews. How old was Moses when he finally left his mother's side? Anybody know?
3 months.
What is that for?
His mother's side. Remember, she raised him. It was 3 months and they hid him. Pharaoh's daughter finds him. And then she's able to nurse him. Right? Right? We agree with that? How old did she nurse him to? Huh?
Nurse as in breastfeeding, or nursing as in caring for the child in the hand?
Breastfeeding.
Got that first.
This might shock you. They would breastfeed their children anywhere from 5 to 7 years of age. Anybody do that? I knew a woman that did breastfeed her child till he was 4 or 5 years old. I knew of a woman that actually did that. And our dad and Tommy said, "Dude, it's gross." But that was normal and it was natural back then. All right. So, what do you teach? What do you teach your 2, 3, 4-year-old child? What do you teach them? You teach them anything about God? I bet you there's some children in this church that could probably tell you why Jesus came to the earth. There's probably some children, young children in this church could tell you how, on what day he arose. And what do you think his mama was telling him? I don't know. But why did Moses not want to be counted with the Egyptians? And did he prefer to suffer affliction with his fellow? What put that in his mind? Remember, he's nursed by his mother, and then he goes and he lives in the palace of Pharaoh, and he lives all of his preteen and teenage years in the palace. The history says that he became a great general, and he was, the Bible tells us he was fluent, mighty in all kind of ways, but history tells us he was a great general and overthrew several nations. How would Moses come to know that it was his people? I think he was sitting on his mama's knee and he was learning something. She was teaching him something. So he wasn't just a year old whenever she quit nursing him and sent him off to the palace. I mean, he was anywhere from 5 to 7 years of age. They nursed him that long. But look what Hebrews says. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden 3 months by his parents because they saw he was a beautiful child and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, Moses, listen, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Why? Why would he not want to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter? Pharaoh, they believe, he was a spiritual being. They believe that Pharaoh was the essence of the sun, S-U-N. And he was worshipped. They believe that Pharaoh was the sun god on earth. When Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, he was refusing to be called a god. What was his mama teaching him? There's one God. His mama was teaching him something. How else would he wouldn't have learned that in the palace. He wasn't going to learn that in the palace. Pharaoh and all of his magicians, they sure weren't going to teach him that. Pharaoh's daughter wasn't going to teach him about the one true God. Where did he learn that? He had to learn that from his mama when she was raising him. He refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Why? Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. He refused to be called a god. Now, you know his stepmama cared for him, but he refused to be called her son. We need more people like Moses. We need more parents like his parents. Raising our children in the Lord. Teaching them when they're real young. And that's what we got for tonight. Anybody got any questions or comments? Wow. All right. Announcement. You can help with meals on Wednesday night. We're serving right at about 40 people every week. We need some help. The list is in the foyer. Choose a week that you can help come and set up and tear down and clean up. We need help. And so if you can help with cooking the meal, that'd be great. Please sign up. Help us with that. Our small group has begun here at the church on Tuesday mornings at 10:45, Charlene, so that you know. I got it, Andy. We forgive you. She said, y'all missed me, huh? She said, who brought the snacks yesterday? I said, nobody. She said, y'all missed me. So, yeah, 10:45 if you want to come. We're studying 1 Peter. If you'd like to come, we're about 30 minutes. And sometimes we have a refreshment afterwards with coffee, and sometimes we don't. All right. When does Lift begin, Angie?
We're going to cancel this week, or this month, and I think it's the 20th of February.
make sure it gets in the bulletin. So lift is canceled for January, but it's going to resume.
Tomorrow, I'll tell you the exact date.
Huh?
I'll text you tomorrow and tell you the exact date,
Okay.
but I think it's the 20th.
Should be the 20th of February. It's going to be the third Thursday, y'all do? Do y'all do the third Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can start marking that down. All right. Couple prayer requests. Cameron and Lacey Childers, they had a baby. The baby lived less than an hour and the baby passed away. They knew that the baby was not going to be able to make it, but still, it's got to be hard on young people. Christy said that Blake, her son's age, and she was a teacher at Mullen, right? She was a teacher. She is a teacher at Mullen. So keep Cameron and Lacey Childers in your prayer, if you would. Tammy Taylor, she is in ICU with renal failure, and Rail's sister Brenda Williams, she's having some heart problems. Do we have any other prayer requests tonight? Steve Treat, I'm going to ask if you would pray for us, close for us tonight if you don't mind. So, do we have any other prayer requests tonight?
The family of Wanda Ham.
I'm sorry, the family of who?
Wanda Ham.
Wanda Camp.
I'd like to remember upon the hill, Sherry's Cabin.
Who?
Sherry's Cabin is her name. It's a brother, Donnie's Cabin Supply. No, Donnie.
So Sherry Scat,
Yeah.
you know the issue?
She went out.
You know the issue?
She passed away.
Oh, the family of Sherry's, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She was waiting on hard money.
Huh?
She was waiting on hard money.
Oh, okay. So the family of Sherry Scat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Carol Kendrick.
Kendrick?
Kendrick.
Carol Kendrick.
Family of Tom Burbrink. He's been at Kentucky Christian since the early 70s.
Tom Burbrink was a Kentucky Christian, but he was in the ministry for several years, and then he felt that his calling was to help ministers with their taxes, and he started a tax service. And the bulk of their business, from what I gathered over the years, was that they did a lot of ministers' tax information. Of course, they do other businesses and other personal, but one of their fortes was helping ministers. And as a minister, if you go to H&R Block or somewhere down the road, they don't know how to handle ministers' taxes because we're treated totally different than everybody else. And they specialized in that. And Angie and I have been dealing with them for years. Thank you for reminding me, because I forgot.
He's also the treasurer for the Chaplaincy Endorsement Commission at the Cal Alexander.
And he was also on the board for Hippo Valley, who was just recently here. So he was a useful servant of the Lord.
Some people might remember Kelly Keller. She married church here for a few years while they were in medical school, and that was her grandfather.
Okay. All right, Steve, I'm going to ask you to close this, if you would. Attention.
Father, we're thankful for every blessing you provide. You're so good to us. Even though even as your children, we often sin and fall short, that you love us and care for us regardless. We're so thankful for that. We pray tonight you'll bless each family, each individual. It's been named tonight, it's been in need of prayer. You know all the needs so much better than we do, but we bring them before you now. We ask you to bless us as we take the things we've studied tonight and make them a part of our daily life and practice, and share those things with others as we spread the message of Christ and tell people about your glory, your reputation, that they might learn who you are and want to follow you. Father, bless us as we leave tonight to go to our homes. Keep us safe on the roads through the next few weeks of the winter weather.